Well, this latest find comes after several venomous sea snakes were spotted around New Zealand this summer. For more on this, we are joined by Clinton Duffy from the Department of Conservation. Hi there, Clinton. Thank you very much for coming on with us tonight.
Good evening.
Hey, it's still pretty unusual, isn't it, to spot a snake around New Zealand, but should we expect to see more of these with climate change and whatnot?
I don't really think so. The sea snakes that we see in New Zealand tend to have been swept off course, a long way off course. And they're sort of right at the limit of their distribution by the time they reach New Zealand. The banded sea snakes, or the crates, they are really strongly associated with land masses and coral atolls. They're much more terrestrial than the yellow-bellied sea snake, which we also get here. So they're really dependent on land, and by the time they get to New Zealand, they're generally pretty exhausted and probably unlikely to survive.
Okay, so there's no real chance of them getting established here?
Not really. It's still too cold for them to, happily inhabit, the waters around New Zealand, particularly over winter. The ocean around most of New Zealand falls well below their lower thermal limit.
Okay, tell us about the species that have been seen around New Zealand and what characteristics they have. Venomous is the word that springs to mind.
Right, yes. Well, all sea snakes are highly venomous. They're elapid snakes, which means they're related to part of a large group of venomous snakes, and they're relatively closely related to, cobras. So they're highly venomous, which is a very good reason to leave them well alone. We have 4 species that occur in New Zealand from time to time. There's 3 types of banded sea snake or sea crate that sometimes occur here, and the yellow-bellied sea snake, which is much more commonly seen around New Zealand. Yeah, that's the reason.
In terms of them being venomous, though, they're still not, I understand, a huge danger to people. Why is that? No,
I mean, they're a fairly shy, sort of timid animal. They're certainly non-aggressive. Usually in the tropics, the males can sometimes become aggressive towards divers during the mating season, but outside that, they're really innocuous, quite an innocuous animal, and you'd really have to try hard to get bitten by one.
Okay, well, I won't be doing that. Hey, just finally, shockingly, if we do spot one of these live snakes, we're not supposed to make them unalive, if you like, by sort of bashing them over the head with something, are we?
No, like all native reptiles, sea snakes are protected under the Wildlife Act. So, $250,000 fine potentially for killing one. So the best thing to do is just to leave them alone and notify the Department of Conservation of where you've seen the animal. And if you've got a photograph of it, that would be great. Often, snake eels are misidentified as sea snakes. So it's always good to get a photograph and be sure we know what we're talking about.
Great advice. Okay, thanks so much, Clinton.
Good evening.